Yo, 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 what is going on, golf fans? It's your boy, Gsluke, here with our round 3 prop stream for the Charles Schwab Challenge. Yesterday ended up being a good one for our props, with us going 1 of 2 in cashes for our prop slips. Ended up being the one on prize picks that came through for us. We had the over on Peyton Buckley, who ended up shooting a 72, and then also Tom Kim, who went low in the morning with that eagle on hole number 1, which, if you guys didn't see it, it was a hole out with a wedge, so a little bit of luck that went our way, but sometimes that's what it takes to have yourself some profit. So we'll take the luck where we can get it. But on top of the 2 cashes that we've had for the first 2 rounds, which, by the way, if you've been watching these live streams, tailing the content throughout these videos, it's been 2 straight profitable days to start the week. So we're going to try and make it the trifecta, try and make it 3 straight slates. Of course, for all the exposure I'm taking on top of these live streams, make sure to support the Patreon page and join over there if you want all of that. But say hi when you guys get into the live stream. We got a little bit of whiskey in the cup that we're sipping on. I see we already got Bobby down there as well, then also Jamari as well. You said good work last night. You said you hate that the weather shifted. It was really bad this afternoon. In fact, Jamari, if we take a look at it, I'm not quite sure you're looking at the right stats, because it played over 2 shots harder in the afternoon. So not sure I agree with you there, because it ended up working out quite well for our exposure. So maybe you were talking about round 1, but either way, the course played exactly as we predicted. We thought in the morning it would play extremely easy. In fact, it played 1.3 under par. Afternoon, it played 0.9 over par. So that was a 2.3 shot difference between the morning and the afternoon, which is why I think you're a little mixed up, Jamari, because your comment makes no sense when we look at those averages. You said, did Scotty get injured? Yes. So I saw that during play. I don't think he got injured. I think it was just an awkward swing that he had. So I wouldn't worry about any sort of an injury. He played perfect golf from that on. The ball striking wasn't the issue. In fact, if you take a look at the ball striking stats for his round, ended up having one of the better ball striking days out of anyone. So yeah, he wasn't injured. I think anyone that says that is probably reacting to that small clip. But on that hole, he ended up hitting a really good second shot. A hole after that had to dart to like 15 feet. So unless we hear otherwise from Scotty, and at least to my knowledge, he didn't say anything in the media after the fact, he's totally fine. So yeah, no injury for Scotty Scheffler. But let's talk about this golf course. And we were going to go through these averages, but kind of like I was hinting at here, it wasn't really fair to look at it as a whole. If you take a look at these averages across both waves, you're not really going to get a test for what you got on each side, because in the morning, I was tracking some of the live averages. It was playing to nearly a 4 birdie average, which is just ridiculous around this golf course. Usually it's in like the 2.9 to 3 range. So this morning they were averaging about a birdie over that average, which is why it led to like over a 2-stroke difference. So, you know, in the morning it was closer to a 3.9 average, whereas in the afternoon wave, it was closer to like a 2.3 birdie average. So that's why I think these averages could be a little bit misleading, and probably why they're not the best to look at, because if we take a look at the weather for Saturday, it's going to be windy the entire day. So on top of getting firmer and faster with this wind drying out the golf course, it's going to be like they had in the afternoon. So that's why I don't think these averages are all that telling, because the afternoon scoring average, where it played 0.87 over par, is I think going to be more spot in line with what we get for round 3, as well as the lower birdie average, the higher bogey average. It was about 3.5 per round, 4 per round in the afternoon, is going to be more so what we get for round 3. And that's even after the cut line and them getting the better players in there. The better tier players are going to score better, but this is by far the worst weather day that we've had. So part of that talent level going up after the cut line is going to be made up for the fact, but due to course conditions being a little bit harder. The one thing I would say is that they're probably going to move up some tee boxes. They usually do that on moving day to begin with, but especially when you have this kind of a weather forecast where they're calling for 13 to 15 miles an hour of winds the entire day, don't be surprised if like hole 4, which is that 250-yard par 3, is moved up, especially if it's not playing downwind. If it's downwind, maybe they tip it out, but one of the other par 3s out of the 4 on site is almost for sure going to be moved up. So, you know, they're going to try and make sure the scoring doesn't get that terrible. So I wouldn't project it to be like a stroke over par, even though the winds are worse. probably pretty close to this like 0.8 over par average. Like maybe it's like 0.5 over par if they really move up a lot of those tee boxes, but a lot closer to these PM wave averages that you're seeing there as opposed to what you had in the morning, because it was like you had two completely different golf courses, right? One side was playing significantly easier than you had on the other. And that was our strategy for props. If you guys remember from last night, we ended up taking the under on Tom Kim because he went off early. Also the over on Hayden Buckley because he had the PM wave tee time, and that worked directly into our benefit. So tomorrow it's not going to be that same kind of strategy just because we have a similar set of conditions throughout the day. So it's more so evaluating players with the same kind of conditions, which I do have to say makes our life a little bit simpler. But I do like these slates where you can play both sides of the draw because you can get more favorable payout structures and more favorable multipliers on sites like Underdog and Prize Picks. So it's a little bit disappointing to not be able to leverage that for our round 3 exposure. But it's worth noting that that PM wave today is, like I said, by far the more meaningful subset. And if you take a look at the tee times, they're doing 3 sums off of hole 1. So they do have 2 groups that will be 2 sums because it's an odd amount of groups. But it's going to be all starting off of the front side. So we are going to get a chance to see this golf course throughout the morning, which I was really hoping they choose to do it this way rather than going off of both sides of the golf course. Because if it was 1 in 10, we might only have like 2 hours from the first to the last tee time. But because they're starting at 7:56 and then the last tee time isn't till 12:55, we've got a solid 5-hour spread there. So it's about double what it would be otherwise. And the result of that is that we can wake up, have our morning cup of coffee, maybe watch the first few groups for their an hour and a half of their front 9 and get a really good sense for the course conditions, because not only is it already going to be windy right off the bat, but the pin locations and the tee boxes for the back 9 are going to start to load in. And what I mean by that is if you go to the shot tracker and you click on these holes, it'll show a white dot for the tee box and for the hole. After the round starts tomorrow, if you guys go to the shot tracker, they're all starting at hole number 1. So they're going to be starting on this side of the golf course. When they get to about hole 6 or 7 or so, the first group on the golf course, they're going to have the tees and the pin locations loaded in for almost the entire back 9. So at that stage, you're not only going to have the averages for those already out on the golf course, but you're also going to be able to take a look at the setup on the back 9 and see if they move up the pin at tee box at 16. See if they decide to move up the tee box at 13 and make it an even easier hole, because that's something to do quite often on a moving day at Colonial. So we're going to go through the pin locations, which, by the way, I'm assuming the PGA Tour will be posting here shortly. In fact, not quite posted yet. We'll see if they get those up while we're here on the live stream. But in general, I think it's going to be a pretty difficult setup, at least compared to the field averages today, significantly harder. But, if you're comparing them to the PM wave, I think it'll be pretty close if we had to take a guess there. I know we have an Underdog board. Let me refresh Prize Picks and see if we have anything over there. I know they didn't have their board up before we got on here, but you have plenty of stuff to go through on Underdog. So we're going to start there if we don't have anything on Prize Picks. And then by the time we spend 15-20 minutes on the Underdog side, hopefully Prize Picks catches up and gets something posted. So yeah, still nothing up quite yet. They do have some Eurogolf stuff if that's up your alley, but we're going to focus on the Underdog side and PGA first. So any questions, any player deep dives that you want, feel free to go ahead and let me know. I said, hey, Luke, you said something about Mr. Grand Slam. Yeah, Mr. Grand Slam is my nickname. So yeah, that is it. I'm not sure what you're referring to, though. He said Rio under 3.5 birdies. So, I think it's going to be difficult. 3.5 birdies, even money does seem like a decent line. I always like to defer to the odds as, to see whether it's line value right off the bat. And if you can give me line value on Rio for the under, I would take it. And yeah, he's minus 170 in that direction. So I'm not sure what site you're seeing that on. I'm guessing Underdog because Prize Picks doesn't have their board up by quite yet. But if it's even money for the under, I would take it. If you've got a multiplier on it, then no thank you. These sites and their multipliers, particularly Underdog, that's putting like 0.8x, 0.77x on some of these multipliers, just completely defeats the purpose, because any sort of value, like look at this, right? Any sort of value you're getting with the 0.82x multiplier is completely nullified. So yeah, if it was even money, I'd say sure, you can consider that. But with that multiplier, sure, I guess, right? Like he's probably going to go under, but you're going to get completely destroyed with the payout. So you're never going to see me entering those sort of props. What I mostly want to look at first, because my first lean when looking at a slate like this is to try and take some fades on guys that were luck sacking it around the course. And what I mean by luck sacking it is that maybe gaining a bunch of their strokes around the green with the putter rather than gaining strokes off the tee on approach. So before I even look at the lines, what I first want to do is I want to sort this by the leaderboard, which we've already done here. And I want to see who are the guys that are just getting lucky with the short game. So let's make it the full event so that we can see both rounds so far. Number one would probably be a Matty Schmid. He's gained 7 strokes in the short game so far. Bryce Garnett has gained about 6 strokes short game over the first 2 rounds. Pretty much anyone that's over that 5 shots gained mark. So like even a Ben Griffin, who's in first place, are guys that I'd raise a red flag on. And the reason for that is that this short game ends up being a lot more volatile than you have in these other categories. And just to kind of focus in on the ball striking stats, let's see who has the worst ball striking of all these guys up top. You have Bryce Garnett, who's actually losing strokes in the ball striking. That is a massive red flag throughout the first 2 rounds. But also a JT Poston that has only gained a half a stroke to this point. That's also a bit of a red flag, especially for a higher tier player. But a Kurt Kitayama, a Pearson Coody that have also been pretty sketchy in those 2 categories are players that I could be looking to get a fade on. So let's go Kitayama. Pearson Coody probably doesn't have a line posted. So let's see. I know Poston will. Let's look at Kitayama, and then maybe Bryce Garnett, because of his positioning, will have something for us to take. So let's see. Bryce Garnett does have a birdie line, but he's at 2.5, which is pretty low. I mean, the average was over 3 today. So, in theory, might want to consider a fade, but I want to see what they have for his strokes line on Prize Picks before we consider on that one. But let's see what they have for Kitayama and then JT Poston. So Kitayama, they have a birdie lineup, and he is 0.89 for the under. So that's another one of those props where it just kind of sucks to have the multiplier on it. And then let's see if they have Poston strokes, which I'm kind of hoping they do because he's more of like a regular player, more of like one of those mid to higher tier guys. And I do want to look at the Draftkings line as well. That's always something I want to use as a baseline here. And I'm assuming that he's like even money, something like that. So in fact, actually minus 130 towards the over. So a slight lean in that direction. I actually like Poston around this golf course, but after seeing the shots gained metrics before, he's completely luck sacking himself with the putter at this point, and with difficult conditions expected, a lot of wind out there. It's going to be really firm towards the latter half of the day. He's got a 12 p.m. tee time, so he's going to be going out when it's really crusty in the afternoon. Just doesn't feel like the best setup for it. So, my first lean before even kind of going through the projections would be to try and find some fades on guys that are playing sketchy golf. And they have the board projected, at least on the first glance here, the exact same pricing as the first few rounds, which I think is a mistake because the winds do look significantly harder tomorrow, and the greens are only going to get firmer and faster. They had some overnight rain last night. That's part of the reason the morning wave played so easy to that minus 1.3 average. And that's not going to be the case ever again this week. It already dried out this afternoon. You saw that with some of the scoring, and that's only going to be more so the case when we take a look at it tomorrow. So going through these, JJ Spawn, I'm kind of curious where they have his line on DraftKings. So let's take a second to find that. JJ Spawn is also minus 130 towards the over. So shots gained metrics are a little bit better on Spawn. That's why he wasn't standing out so much before, but he's got one of the weaker games with the shots gained ball striking of all these guys towards the top. In fact, to find somebody that's lower ranked than Spawn, we've got to go the whole way down to a Bryce Garnett before we find anyone. And then it's Garnett, it's Posted, then it's Colley there. So another guy at 69.5 that you could consider for that kind of an over. The issue is if these guys were at 68.5 for their lines, it would be like the most no-brainer play ever for them not to shoot -2. But because they are like mid to higher tier players in this kind of field, it's not impossible for them to shoot -1 or better. In fact, they've probably got 35-40% equity to go out there and do that sort of thing. The issue is, or I guess the good thing, if we're taking a fade here, is that well over 50% of the time, they probably are going to go over that sort of line, because the scoring average is +1. Even gaining a stroke to the field is probably about an even par round. And gaining a stroke to the field is about these two players' baselines. The average probably a little bit under a stroke gained per round up to the field. Elite tier guys like Scotty average about 2 shots gained per round. Guys like Cantlay, a little bit over a stroke per round, like maybe 1 to 1.5, depending on how they're playing. Your Postons, your Spawns are closer to the half a stroke to like 0.75 shots gained per round. And that's when they're playing good golf, which granted, both of them are in decent form. So, you'd give him that whole like 0.5 to 0.75 shots gained, but that would be about a 70 projection, not 69.5. So that's why I would be leaning on the over on these sort of players. And yeah, the birdie lines all having these multipliers makes them absolutely useless. I honestly don't even look at them when they have the multipliers at this point because they completely scam you on the odds. When it says like 0.86x, they don't only just give you that multiplier, but they also screw you with the correlation. And when you use birdie or better props, if you use just two regular birdie or betters, so just to give you guys an example of what I'm talking about here, let's find a couple birdie or better lines that don't have the multiplier on it. You're only going to get 2.58x, which is just absolute horseshit. Like, for example, if you took two overs, it'd be 2.58x. If you took two unders, it'd also only be 2.58x. So not only do the birdie or better props suck because of that, your payouts are already lower. But if you have a multiplier on it, like the 0.8x one, it goes down to like below a 2x payout for the two props, which is essentially like getting plus 100 odds on that sort of thing. And trust me, a two-leg parlay, even if it has good odds to go out there and hit, is hardly ever going to be worth playing at plus 100 odds. Unless you're getting like minus 200 to minus 300 legs on those two, it's never going to be worth it to play those sort of props. So that's why we had the question before about like the Hisatuni under. I kind of dismissed it so fast. It wasn't that it was a stupid question or anything. It's just that Underdog completely ruins the payouts over here. And I do want to do some research on these birdie lines as well. So let's look at Poston. Let's see, Kitayama, maybe he has a line that we can look at on DraftKings too to try and do some of this research. So let's see. And we can look at Spawn as well. So Poston is minus 120 under. So yeah, the strokes line seems to be slightly better value. Let's look at Spawn. So Spawn is minus 130. So he's the same for both of those props. And then let me see if they have a Kitayama prop for birdie. So they do, and he's minus 145 towards the under. So like, I'm not sure. He probably has a multiplier on it then, right? Because that's how Underdog rolls with these. Yeah, he's got that 0.89x on it. Yeah, based on what we've looked at so far and comparing it to the sportsbook lines, if you're going to find fades, it looks like at least on the Underdog side that strokes is the way to go. Now, I'm seeing them loading in a few more categories as I just refreshed this on here. So they've got some bogey lines posted. They also have some fairway and green lines posted. And based on the averages from today and the course getting firmer and faster, I think tomorrow the green average is probably going to be like 10.75 per round. I think it's going to go down a little bit, but maybe not that much because the cut line is going to lead to better players playing the weekend. And then the fairway average, it'll probably only go down to like 7.7 per round, maybe 7.8 per round for the same reason, right? It'll be slightly harder to hit fairways in the higher winds, also with the course drying out, but you've got better guys out there on Saturday, Sunday. So to go back, take a look at this board now. By the way, looks like Prize Picks has a board, so we'll get to that in here in just a minute or two after we round off the Underdog side. But based on what we see here, they've got 2.5 bogeys on players, which today in the lower wins, I was looking at a lot of 2.5 unders on bogeys, and I hit on them. Like, for example, Hideki Matsuyama, Tommy Fleetwood both went under their 2.5 bogey lines today. They're at that same number, but with the higher wins, it's nowhere near as good a value. In fact, today, the bogey average was still 2.8 per round, and that was with easier conditions. Tomorrow, with the winds kicking the entire day, it's going to be at least 3 bogeys per round, and realistically, probably closer to 3.3 to 3.5 bogeys or worse being made per round. So, while those were probably values towards the under, even before the round started, I think they were like minus 130, but by the time I took them during play, they were like minus 185 under. So they were kind of no-brainers to mix in. Now look at the odds. Now Hideki's actually minus 130 over. Tommy Fleetwood is still slightly juiced towards the under just because he is such a good bogey avoider. But maybe we can find some of these like lower tier guys at 2.5 and we can fade them. But it does look like they only have those posted without a multiplier for your elite tier players. So it's Prize Picks is probably going to have a slightly larger selection. And to go back to the fairway line, so fairway average about 8 per round. This Ricky Fowler line at 8.5 is kind of staring at me at the face right now, especially if it's going to be slightly harder to hit fairways with it drying up, them also having to play in those windy conditions. Let's see what he has for a line, because DraftKings is posting all these different categories, which by the way is a kind of nice of them. I don't overuse the odds or anything like that, but Ricky is minus 135 towards the under. And what I'd say is he's an average to below average accuracy guy to begin with. So if the average is going to be like 7.7, 7.8 per round, there's probably even more value on this sort of prop than what you're seeing with that minus 135. So let's throw Ricky in there, and then let's see what else we can potentially pair him up with. Like, for example, Hideki Matsuyama, I know he's had a little bit of struggles with when it comes to the fairways lately, but he's a good green regulation player. Like, even in that win, 10.5 greens does seem a little low. Let's see what we can find for that. And he only plays the hard events, so if you take a look at his green and regulation rank, it's never really going to be the best. He is minus 125 under, which I don't necessarily agree with. So if at some point over the next day or so before lock happens, we end up getting this juice towards the over, like maybe like 1.1x towards the over, maybe I play that with Hideki. But as is, with it being even money and then on the books juiced under, I'll probably stay away from that one. Let's keep going through this. So Brian Harman, by the way, to have Ricky Fowler and Brian Harman at the same line for fairways is blasphemous. Obviously, Ricky, below average fairway guy. Brian Harman, the exact opposite. Brian Harman is an extremely accurate driver of the golf ball. So, like, in theory, this could even be a slip that you entered because I think there's value on both sides. There's not necessarily like correlation here, right? It's just like one, I think, should be projected higher, one should be projected lower, but you're getting a boosted payout here anyways. Because, like, sure, the wind affects you hitting fairways, but it's not going to like drastically affect how these guys are hitting the fairways tomorrow. Strokes, things like bogey lines, birdie lines are a lot more affected by the weather than what we were mentioning before with categories like greens or fairways. So, like, this could definitely be a look. I'm not sure if it's going to be what we take for our slip, but like this sort of idea could be something that we go with. And I want to look at the rest of these guys for like greens. So they've got 10.5 on Ricky, but he is juiced towards the under. And like McIntyre, like he's juiced towards the over at 10.5 greens, I'm guessing, based on the fact that he has that multiplier. How is Hideki towards the under? Like, look at this. In fact, he's aggressively juiced over at that minus 155 odds. Like, I just don't agree with what DraftKings is doing with that 10.5 line there. So we'll have to see what Prize Picks post for those. Speaking of, I do want to take a peek at what they have for a board just to see comparatively where they have these guys. So they have a Brian Harman at 70, a Jordan Spieth at 70 as well, which this looks like it's about 0.5 higher than what we have on Underdog. So kind of agreeing with me that they probably think it's going to play harder than what these sports books do. And just to confirm that, let's find some of those players that we were actively looking to fade, and let's see if they're 0.5 higher like they probably should be. So, for example, where is JT Poston, and then where is JJ Spawn? I'm just going to type them in up top to make our lives a little bit easier. Poston is 0.5 higher. Let's look at Spawn as well. Spawn also 0.5 higher. Let's see if they have a Kurt Kitayama line. So Kurt Kitayama is actually the whole way up at 70.5. Just in luck down at 3 birdies as well. So Prize Picks definitely taking the stance that this golf course is going to play harder tomorrow. And just by looking at some of these birdie lines as well, let's see where DraftKings has Jordan Spieth for his birdie line. Just curious on that one because he's at even money on DraftKings. I mean, on Prize Picks. And look at that. He's minus 140 towards the over. So, you know, they're going to even hang a Jordan Spieth at minus 140 because they think it's going to play harder. That's them essentially laying a trap, right? That's them saying like, oh, go out there and take that over on Jordan Spieth. You see him there at that minus 140. We think this golf course is going to play harder. Now, I tend to agree with them. That's the shitty part here, right? Because if I disagree with them, if I thought it wasn't going to play that much harder because of that wind, maybe I would just go and jam that Jordan Spieth prop right away. But I think that they're pretty sharp with what they're doing with this board right now. And I want to look at what they have for Hideki as well, out of curiosity. By the way, Jordan could not putt for his life today. Same thing with Hideki. And then he's also minus 130 for the over. So, like, if you're just a slut for the sportsbook odds, which I'm not somebody that's a plus EV bot that only follows what we have for this kind of juice. If you were, though, it'd be like entering these two, and then it'd probably be entering these two on Underdog. But we've far from settled on the slips that we're going to be taking at this point. The one thing I'd say, but choosing between a Hideki and a Jordan, obviously Jordan at minus 140 might be the better lean just because of that kind of a difference. And in the morning, it's still going to be windy, but it's not going to be as firm and fast as what it'll be in the afternoon. Usually there's some humidity, some moisture that comes through the area overnight, that dew that makes the golf course a bit softer, which will help people making birdies for the first few hours. And that's part of the reason why it played easier this morning. It was more receptive than what you had in the afternoon. The wind was obviously a big part of that as well. But yeah, if I was choosing between those two and like trying to find an over, it probably would be this Jordan Spieth prop. And if I was going to choose between these two props and which one I was going to take, I would take the Ricky Fowler under just because of the winds and then also the course drying up. It's going to be hard to hit fairways. And, Brian Harman should be able to handle that because he is a very accurate driver when he's playing well. But Ricky Fowler fading on that category, which, by the way, cheers to everyone out here, by the way. We got some whiskey in the cup. I just want to bring out the PGA Tour averages. So this is the 13 Colonies bourbon that we're sipping on, which I've had for quite some time at this point, which tells you I don't necessarily like it that much, but we're powering through with what we've got here. Let's look at Ricky Fowler's driving average for the year and catch up on chat too. I got you. What's going on, Antonio? I said, what's going on, Luke in chat? You said, Scotty's a god in everything, but his 67.5 line is looking a little bit tired even. Do we ever play his over? I'm not going to, Antonio, especially with the fact that he gained with his ball striking today and then lost with the short game. I know he's a god. I know it's maybe a little bit tempting to look at that sort of a line, but there's other guys that you can fade. And I guess here's the counter argument for making that sort of play is that even though he sucked today, he gained 1.4 strokes off the tee, and he gained 1.6 strokes with his approach play. He lost around the green, which never happens for Scotty Scheffler. And then the 3 shots gained to putting, that does happen to him occasionally. Unfortunately, he is not the most consistent putter that we have out there, but he's been a lot better this year. In fact, he's a top 15 putter on the PGA Tour this year. So I'd say that's playing with fire, man. He's a little bit of a god, as you said. Check out Boom's props, crazy value. Is that a new site or something? Because I've never seen that before. If so, I'll have to check it out. Tomorrow is going to be windy, that's for sure. Pin locations just dropped. Cool. We'll deep dive those here in a second. They've got Goddard up 3.5 at -165. Oh, so yeah, you're saying Rio's -170, but a normal payout over there? Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, if you can find even money on those sort of things for fades in the afternoon, I would definitely consider adding those into slips. I actually didn't know that site existed. So hopefully they're reliable. There's something that you can count on. I'm going to have to do my research before I talk that up on live stream here because, I'm not going to promote or like shout out a website like that without knowing that they're legit ahead of time. So yeah, the multipliers on Underdog are a joke. He said Scotty worse than 20 finishing position is not bad since he's at 49 right now. I don't know about that one, Chief. I would actually say that he's got a good chance to finish top 20 at this point. In fact, let's just looking at the sportsbook odds to give you an idea on that. They've got him at +125. Sorry, that's the top 10. His top 20 odds are probably minus money then. So let's see. So he's -250 to top 20. Yeah, I don't know, man. The sportsbooks still think he's going to top 20. They posted the holes. Cool. We'll check those out in a few. Thoughts on Akshay for the under at +115, and that's an under at 69.5. He said, it's going to be windy, but you could see -1s. Yeah, I'm okay with -1s on a few players, especially if you're getting like plus money, like +125, +130 on an under, especially on a player that looks good from the shots gained. I wouldn't be against playing. But yeah, on a site like Underdog or Prize Picks where you're taking -130 inherent juice, I probably wouldn't play that sort of a prop. So Akshay in particular at +115, that's honestly pretty close to a coin flip for me. I think that he should be juiced towards the over, just like you have with a lot of these other players. But compared to the Postons, the spawns that we were looking at for a fade, his shots gained profile is much more favorable than what you have for those kind of players. Rather than it all being the short game like you had for a Poston or Spawn, it's much more balanced, like an Akshay Bhatia. So yeah, I guess if you're going to take an under, it would be on that sort of player, especially I'd say like +120 or more on a player that makes sense with the shots gained. It's the kind of number that I'd be firing on. He said, you're a slut for winning money. I agree with that. He said, Scotty sold you today. Do you think he bounces back? Yes, I do. And Daniel, he may have sold you today, but you won profit if you followed the slips from last night. So let's let's not be too down in the outs about it, because I don't have to give out slips for free here. That's for sure. It's not something that, I'm obligated to do or anything like that. So if you guys don't like the profit, then I don't have to give you guys shit. I'll leave it behind the paywall if I have to. I hate to be that guy, but like when I get comments like that down in the chat, it just annoys the hell out of me. Okay. We're going to look at matchups later, Brian. So if you give me another like 10 minutes after we finish off the prop stuff, we'll get through those ones. What's going on, Joseph? I don't know who that is at the beginning, but you're saying something's good. Okay. Not much of a wave edge from the DFS perspective. If you're talking about over the 2 days, it was a slight lean towards the PMAM. But if you're talking about for like today's showdown slate, there was a massive edge. So depends which slate you're talking about. Main slate, a slight edge. Today, more so. You said you weren't trying to promote, just realized you had every book. Yeah, no, I know you're not trying to promote it, James. I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to like go through props on it and like say, check out the ones on Boom and whatnot. And unless like I've done it myself before. So you're totally good in chat. You can say whatever you want, right? Because I'm not the one promoting it, right? When you're saying it down there, I'm just saying, like, personally, me going through the board, not going to do that here in this live stream, if that makes sense, right? I've got to like sign up for an account, do some due diligence, make sure that people can actually withdraw from their website. And then we can talk it up here in the live stream, if that makes sense. But you're totally good to throw those down in chat, because if you already play over there, I mean, first off, that Rio under at -170, play that as soon as possible. Like, for sure, if you're getting even money. I think even Goddard up at that same number, like Goddard up is a slightly better birdie maker. So it's maybe not as good a value, but it's still -160 odds. Like, yeah, play that for around 3x if you could. He said, Luke, these unappreciated turds, you don't know how I put up with them. I don't know, man. I'm just on edge because I lost one of my good friends this week. Literally, my buddy DGen75 died. So to say that my nerves are a little bit shot this week would be an understatement. I've had to catch myself a few times, kind of being a dick to people, but that's what happens when you're grieving, right? Sometimes you're a dick because your nerves are shot and you can't sleep and shit like that. So I apologize if I maybe took that the wrong way or came off a little harshly, but it's true too. Like, I don't have to put stuff out. So like, if we win money and I'm getting bitched at, like, I will stop doing it. I don't put it this way. If I have to sweep a slate for anyone to give me credit for it, I'm just not going to do it. That just makes no sense. Like, why would I put myself through that sort of grief when it has no tangible impact on my return? Like, I've got a Patreon page, plenty of people that subscribe to it, that support what I do, that will still continue to do so, whether I put out free plays or not, right? They're still going to be there. And that's, I don't know. I'm going to continue to put out plays. I'm not going to let the bad apple spoil anything, but that's why I react that way. So it just makes me roll my eyes. It's like, okay, dude, cool. He said, Luke's the GOAT. You never seen the best explanation when it comes to golf. Hey, I appreciate that, man. And he said, DGens, he said, sorry about my loss. Yeah, man. DGen75 is an absolute legend, but you're right. It is just DGens, right? They're probably down money on something. They've got to like use gambling to get their money back. It's kind of sad. I agree with you, man. It's really stupid. He said, you and the Ship It Nation crew are nothing short of respectable and classy people. I appreciate that too, man. Let's get these slips figured out, though. So I know I want this Ricky Fowler under. That Harbin prop still might be something I take at some point. I just don't want to take the same category for these slips on both sites. The Jordan Spieth over is kind of sketchy. I'm not 100% sure I want to play that one. That was more something I just wanted to point out with the odds. But over here on the underdog side, in terms of pairings with this, we could go to that JT Poston over, because the payout when you use a fairway prop and then you add in, a fade for strokes is a lot more respectable than it otherwise would be. And the double fade slips here on underdog are normally better payouts anyways, right? Like, you're normally going to get over the 2.5x like you're getting on Prize Picks. Like, for example, if we had two fades on Prize Picks, this is 2.5x right here, because we have the fairway line in there, as opposed to maybe like a birdie line that we're taking for the under. Just to give you guys an example, because this is how stupid the birdie lines are in here in underdog. If this was an under on this category, it would have to change the fairway line of Ricky, not what we had there with Poston. So we had that backwards, but it would have been 2.58x if we ended up having that change over there. So that's why it makes so much more sense to mix in a fade slip like this. And 2.85x, I don't think is the worst payout on this sort of slip. And JT Poston's a guy that I've seen kind of struggle in the windier conditions before. So this will be the slip that we throw out here on the underdog side. So slightly under the 3x payout, but not the worst considering that it's two fades together. And it does give us some slight correlation if the windy conditions show up. And I know the Ricky Fowler prop maybe not as affected by the winds, but it'll still be a little bit affected if it gets super blustery out there. The Poston one's more so that you're going to see that with. And then here on Prize Picks, luckily we do have these other categories loading in. And just to see where do they have Ricky Fowler for his fairways, I want to see if they have a line for comparison. And he is also at 8.5 over here. So potentially could be a prop that you take on that site as well. But like Ben Griffin is a better fairway percentage player than Ricky, and he's way down there. And the only explanation I can have is like maybe Ricky's having a good year at hitting fairways. He's like number 63 on the PGA Tour this year. But like just to give you guys an idea of like why I think this is such a crazy line. I mean, the guy is really bad at hitting fairways. I mean, last year he was number 99 on the PGA Tour, which actually was one of his better years that he's had. But if you go back historically, number 113 the year before that, go back to the year before that one, I believe it falls off even more, number 131 that you have on the PGA Tour. So like even if he's had a decent year so far hitting fairways, like I really don't care. He's historically, for 99% of his career, somebody that has not hit that many fairways. So let's take him out of there and see what else we have on here. Look at this. Like Tommy Fleetwood's at that same number. Tommy Fleetwood is an elite tier driver of the golf ball. Like I'm talking about somebody that is routinely in the top 50 of the PGA Tour when it comes to driving accuracy. And just to check to see what the line value is, he does have a later tee time when the course is going to start to firm up a little bit, but he's minus 150 over. So like, in fact, this is going to be the slip that we take. Okay, let's take Ricky Fowler out. We're going to go back to Underdog and figure out something to put with Poston. We're going to take these two because he's minus 150 and then the minus 130 for the under. And I think the Ricky Fowler prop should be like minus 150 under too. So it's a 3x payout if you take those two together. And then just for the sake of Underdog, if we take the two strokes fades together, it'll be it's only 2.7x. Well, what we could do is actually go back to the Brian Harmon one that we were looking at before, right? Because he's at 8.5 and he has that minus 130 over. If we took these two together, that would be a 3.09x payout. So if you want to juice it up, maybe even a little bit more than that, perhaps you go over here, throw in Spawn at that 69.5 as well, and get that to like the 5.72x. But you guys know the format we usually do with these free slips. Normally it's one on Underdog, one on the Prize Picks side. Let's go with these two for a little bit over that 3x payout, and then these two on Prize Picks for exactly that 3x payout. And there's line value involved with every single prop that we've pointed out here. All of them are at least minus 130 odds. There's two fades and then two overs, and the overs, like we were going through with the stats before, are in categories that are less affected by the wind. Also players that are elite tier players when it comes to that given category. So those will be the slips that we're taking here for the stream. We're going to go through some matchups and stuff, Brian. So if you're still here down there in the chat, we're going to go through that here in a second. So any sort of props you guys want me to deep dive, feel free to go ahead and let me know. But outside of that, let me go through some of the other categories and maybe give you a few thoughts on those that we didn't touch on quite yet. So greens regulation, I think the average is going to be about 10.5 per round. And just based on this board here, it looks pretty appropriately priced. Like there might be some unders you could consider. Like a Goddard up just based on the first look there, kind of looks like somebody had line shop for an under. And I guess we'll do so because I'm assuming he has a line on Draftkings. If he's got a line on Prize Picks, and he is minus 125 towards the under. So like that could be a fade that you take, but I think that's about the field average. So I wouldn't necessarily say that that's like massive value in that category. These bogey props, so they have a lot of like your mid to lower tier guys at 3.5. That feels pretty fair for like your Ricky Fowlers. Your Doug Gim, who is a very good bogey avoider. He's somebody that usually ranks in like the top 50 on tour in that category. Could be value towards the under, but let's see if he has a line. Doesn't look like he has one here on DraftKings, which is unsurprising because he's not an elite tier player. But let's see where they have Ricky Fowler, because he's probably on here, I would imagine, because of his positioning. I guess not. I spoke too soon. They don't have Ricky Fowler posted, but Goddard's at 3.5 and he's minus 140 towards the under. So I've got to say, maybe like Doug Gim under 3.5 bogeys can make sense. Like he doesn't have a line, but he's a pretty good bogey avoider from what we've seen out there on tour. It is going to be tougher conditions out there, but making 4+ bogeys is going to be a pretty poor round when it's all said and done. So just by the way, to show you the averages on the bogey lines, I know Doug Gim's had a terrible year, by the way. So I actually think his rank this year is probably not going to be that good. But let's see. So Doug Gim, he's still better than average. He's number 99 at bogey avoidance this year. So that's despite him having a terrible season so far, by the way. But last year, he was number 6 in the category. Now, that's what I remember about Doug Gim. Year before that, let's check this out. Number 12 on the PGA Tour. Year before that, I mean, this is enough said right here, right? Like, I think you guys get the point at this point. He's always been either an average, above average, or even an elite tier bogey avoider. So maybe you could look at that. And then this birdie lines, we were looking at these ones before. I'd say if you're going to take a positive stance play, the fairway lines kind of make sense for it. I think the green lines, like Hideki over 10.5 might be a look. I just wish the sportsbook line value was better there. But then it's maybe these birdie lines that you could consider for it. Matt Kuchar, 2.5. Like, that seems awfully low. He has really good course history around here. He's also a good wind player. It's on an overly long golf course. Let's see what his line is. So doesn't have a line actually on the sports books. Let me see if I can find a 2.5 that's like a similar player to Cooch, because at least what I see here, they're all at 2.5. Even Garnett is at 2.5 and he's minus 170 over. I don't know. I've got some line shopping we're going to have to do after this, because there are some positive stance plays that I think you could still play because of how soft some of the pricing is. But as you can see as well, also a lot of fades that I think can make sense. So those will be the free slips that we go through together. Of course, guys, for all the exposure I end up entering as I get to it, you guys can find that over there on my Patreon page. The link to that can be found down below. But before we hop on out of here, we are going to go through some of these matchups next. So let me bring up that board, as well as touching on any questions that you've got. And like I said, my apologies for the outburst before, but it was true. I'm annoyed this week because of the stuff that's happened, kind of nerves on edge. And if I get a stupid ass comment like that, I'm going to respond accordingly. I hate to say, I'm a very blunt person. It's just going to happen. He said, your condolences. Don't apologize for anything. You guys appreciate doing this in our time. Of course. He said, Hobbit. No, you're not a Hobbit fan, huh? He's a good fairway hitter, though. For as short as he is, he does hit a lot of fairways. And the other thing, too, is he's a good wind player. So I'm going to be playing it. He said, you here? Just getting a refill. Cheers to you, man. He said, the Gim Reaper's still decent. Yeah, like, he's not had a great year, and he's still an above-average bogey avoider. I mean, that tells you the kind of class player that he is. So I'm all for that, man. But let's go through these 3 balls, and we're going to spend some time going through these. Yesterday, our Vegas matchup that we played, he ended up getting smoked. I guess today's action is when Vegas ended up playing. Let's find a better one for tomorrow, because I don't want our guy to get smoked. And I know it was a long shot. He was plus 225. You're getting what you pay for at some point when it comes to the price. But let's see what we can do. And my main narrative, the ball striking is always important. You want to find guys that are ball striking it versus players that are luck stacking it. But I also want players that are good wind players, because it's going to be real blustery out there. I think it's going to be very tough depending on the kind of skill set that you have. And what I'm looking for are guys that I've noticed play well in the wind versus guys that maybe aren't known for that. Like, and Eric Cole is a really good wind player, but he's the favorite at plus 145 in that group, which I just feel like you're getting taxed with that sort of a number. Ryan Gerard, though, he's somebody that really hit the ball well today and has played well in the windy conditions that I've noticed this year. And I feel like he should be the clear favorite. Now, he's at the same odds as Thorbjorn Olesen, so they're at that same number, but maybe this one could make a little bit more sense. Let's throw the Eric Cole one in there too. Plus 145 is not my favorite number, but it's also not the worst. And we want to remember that we're betting players, not always just numbers on a lot of these guys. Christian Bezuidenhout, he's got really good ball striking stats to this point, losing strokes putting. Webb Simpson, I hate to rag on the guy, but at this age, I'm not that worried about him in that kind of group. Vince Whaley's also a pretty volatile player himself. Who else do we have here? So English plus 115. I like him as the favorite, but not at that sort of number. Just no way I'd get there. A Kuchar plus 170 with his course history. That is intriguing, but he should probably be plus 200, I'd say, before I'd go out there and bet that. Like, he's older too. Like, he doesn't scare me that much at that sort of group. Let's see. Wallace plus 175. He is a pretty good wind player, but Andrew Novak is a baller too. So I probably don't want to bet against him. Let's see. Harry Hall plus 180. Actually, this is probably my favorite one we've found so far. This Harry Hall plus 185. He's been a pretty decent wind player. He's got a heavy ball flight, big guy, so it kind of makes sense that he'd play well in the wind. It's hard to buffet him around. with how much mass he has behind him. And in my opinion, out of these three players, he should be the second favorite, maybe slightly ahead of a Bud Colley. His ball striking stats today, Harry Hall, were some of the best that you had out of the entire field. So let's throw him into the shopping cart. And we've only got a few more groups left, it looks like, after these last few. So these would be the main four I'd be looking at. I've got Gerard with his ball striking today, which just to show you guys the reasoning behind that. Gerard round 2 gained 1.6 strokes approach, lost 3 strokes putting. So he's like the perfect shots gained candidate for some regression. Let's look at Eric Cole next. So Eric Cole, I don't think the shots gains were as favorable on, but you can see gained strokes on approach today and was a slight loser with the putter. So he's got that same kind of idea and is a pretty good wind player. Worth noting that Ryan Gerard's also pretty good in the wind. Christian Bezainhout, and by the way, guys, it's the same case with all three of these guys so far. Seabez gained 2 strokes on approach, but lost a stroke with the putter. And then the last one, Harry Hall, is the same exact thing. So no shit, no wonder why I'm on all these guys in particular. You can see up top, Harry Hall has gained about 3 strokes between the ball striking categories, but lost strokes out there on the green. So these would be the kind of 3 balls I'd be trying to sprinkle in. I do think that FanDuel should have better odds on these. So do your line shopping and see what you can get. Hard Rock Bet probably doesn't have the board up yet because they're usually pretty late to end up getting these boards up. But if I can get at least the same odds that I see here on DraftKings, I'm going to end up betting those 4 myself. I think that those 4 lines that you see there are more than bettable. And if I can get a better line than what I have, then I'm going to be an even happier buyer to go out there and mix those in. So that gives you a little portfolio of 4 that you could play. I wouldn't parlay them or anything, right? I know some people are a little bit wilder than me and I run like a 4-man parlay with plus money 3 balls. That's not the kind of thing that I do. I just bet them straight, normally a half unit, a unit a piece, depending on how big my 3-ball card is. And especially because they normally go for like plus 150s or more. These are actually some of like the shorter odd 3 balls that I normally play in my process. Normally my process is find the low owned, the low win equity diamonds in the rough that you can mix in. This case, because it's a win slate, it's a little bit more on the ball striking and also trying to find guys that are good in this sort of condition. So those are the 4 props. Those are the 4 3 balls that you might want to consider adding. But outside of that, guys, that is all I've got for this round 3 live stream. Best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are getting to. For all the slips that I'm taking, the Patreon page is the place to be. And then also on top of that, we do have my showdown sheets that I post over there as well. That shows all the showdown stuff for tomorrow's slate. So we've got projected ownership on there, projected fantasy points for round number 3, as well as my entire 150 max pool. And I guess we can show you guys the top end of my player pool. I am playing Brian Harman because of his wind prowess. Hideki Matsuyama is a high upside player that I'm using. Also some Jordan Spieth because of his course history. And then Scotty Scheffler going to be in probably half of my lineups towards the top. So maybe not a full 2x leverage at that 36% ownership, but with the way that he's ball striking it and that bounce back that I was calling for before, he's going to be making his way into my player pool. And not only do I show you guys my entire player pool, ownership, also the projected points, but also all the reasoning behind my player pool. And that's what all that colorful stuff to the left was. It's not just because I wanted to make it look nice. It's because it shows you the exact reasoning for why I'm on all of those plays, including them being ball striking poppers, short game regression candidates, also players with good course history, high upside players. And then, like I was mentioning with Brian Harman, guys that are just good in the wind. And in Brian Harman's case, because he is so short and has that low center of gravity, he's extremely hard to push over. And Harry Hall, it's kind of like the opposite, right? You kind of want to be either really short or really big when you're playing in the wind. Because if you're really short, you've got the low center of gravity. But if you're really big, like a Harry Hall and heavy, you're not going to move that guy around, right? It's like Shane Lowry. He doesn't get moved around when you have those windy conditions because he's got that beer belly mass behind him. And it's good for those windy conditions. It's what goes out there and pays with those kind of conditions. And that's all we've got for round number 3. So I appreciate you guys. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already here on the channel, and also subscribe for all the content to come so you guys don't miss anything as we go live. That'll of course include our round 4 live stream where we'll be doing the same thing out there for Sunday's play on there, completely breaking down the conditions as we did here, as well as going through all of our exposure for tomorrow. So make sure to stop by for that, as well as for our round 4 showdown stream, which will be on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So that one's a little bit earlier in the evening. Q&A. That's where you can answer or go over all of your different fantasy questions that you have for any given slate. And tonight, we also had the fantasy stream that was a little bit earlier on the Ship It Nation channel. On top of the prop stuff here, if you guys are curious about all of that fantasy stuff, check out the Ship It Nation YouTube, because there's a replay on there of that live stream, and you can get my full thoughts for the moving day exposure. But as I said, that's all we've got for round number 3, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night.